Are you still plugging away here? I need, just need to print out applications.
Is this for Townsend, Chris?
No, it's for Bayview.
Hi, can I help you?
Hi, for 1580 Avenue Suite. I already like put myself down as Matt here for the we're at 10:15.
Do you support?
Yeah.
Have a seat.
Am I the only speaker?
Actually, we're not on the agenda.
Is this the one for Townsend? All right. Are they here?
So it's on the south, well, I'll talk to the make sure that looks okay, and then that plan subdivision works. Just so I have extra. Thank you.
You don't agree with your own design with this. So.
I'll just do what I do. Oh, you know what? I need to look into that, and I'll get back to you. So, I'll try and get back. I just said what? I just said back.
Smart. I'll look for it. Yeah, yeah. Okay. I just forward you an email we got from the city of Forester asking if you're willing to put an amendment on the floor to permit childcare use in Walkley, given the meeting you're having.
Oh, so that it's all done and done.
Because otherwise we have a 2-year moratorium on amendments.
Okay, good. But is anything drafted?
Yeah, he sent you the wording he's suggesting. I just forwarded it to your Toronto.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure you're okay with it. Yes. Okay.
King High, you said?
Yeah.
I was just looking at what not to confirm. You know what it was? The person I said, sorry, it was different. Good morning. We have quorum. Would councilors take their seats, please? Thank you. That's good. Meeting is called to order. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Could I have a mover to confirm the minutes of October 17th? Councillor Pasternak, Councillor Carroll, all in favor. Opposed, carried. Please call out the items that you want held as we go through. Items 1, 2, 3 are time specific. Item 4 is as well. Item 5. Okay, we'll hold item 5. Item 6. we'll hold item 6. Item 7 is being held as a request to speak. Item 8, Bartley Drive. Okay, okay. Councillor Min and Wong would like us to recommend an extension of the notification area. It's up on the board. Would you please read it? Councillor Min and Wong can't be here today. Councillor Carroll, you're okay with it?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. So that takes care of item 8. Item 9? Oh, yes. Good. Moving it. Item 10. Moving it. Item 11. Councillor Pasternak.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to defer item 11 to the next scheduled Community Council meeting.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 12.
I'd like to hold that down.
Councillor Pastor. I'm sorry. Always Stop Control and Tibbies. Being held. Councillor Pasternak, item 13, King High Avenue and Robbie.
I'd like to defer that to the next scheduled Community Council meeting.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 14, parking prohibitions on Sheppard Avenue West.
I'll move the staff recommendations.
Okay. Item 15 is being held. Item 16 is being held. Well, the councillor is not here yet. Item 17 is being held. Item 18 is being held. Item 19 is being held. Item 20. Oh, which one? Okay, item 19, please, parking prohibition, Old Young Street. Councillor Burnside is moving on behalf of Councillor Robinson the staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 20. Always Stop Control, Lee Crest Road. And Mallory, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 21 is being held. 22 held. 23. Councillor Burnside. Item 23, amendment to stopping and parking regulations on Sutherland.
Yes, move staff recommendation.
All in favor? Okay. Item 24.
Liquor license.
That's Councilor Robinson, I'll be moving that on her behalf.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Burnside, what would you like to do with item 25?
It's time for 10:30.
Right, the rest are timed. Okay. Item 1, please.
New items?
Oh, are there new items? Yes. Councillor Burnside, you want to introduce an item regarding a speed hump change on Broadway Avenue.
Yes, please.
Oh, great.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And Councillor Burnside, Tanager Avenue.
Tanager Park, I was hoping to get that time for 9:45, because I think there are a number of people who'd like to speak to it.
Okay, 9:45 or thereabouts. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Pasternak, Wilmington.
Yes, I'd like to introduce item 2532, parking changes on Wilmington Avenue, parking
All in
amendments.
favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Fillion, representation at local appeal body for 90 Johnson.
I'll
All
put it
in
on.
favor?
I'll put it on.
Opposed? Carried. Councillor Fillion, representation at local appeal body for 169 Goulding. Councillor Pasternak, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Can I have a better pencil? Look at this. It's okay. Thank you. Councillor Fillion, 116 Bogart. Bogart? Councillor Pasternak?
Yeah, I'll move it.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried?
Do you have any others?
All right. All right.
Hello?
Any other new items?
Councillor Cole,
Yes, Madam Chair.
could we go over a couple of items with you now to see if you'd like to hold them or not?
Yes.
Okay. Who held item 5?
We can move the staff recommendation on 5. Or
All in
I will do that.
favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 6,
It's already been included in that.
item 6 was Councillor Fillion, OPA zoning bylaw amendment for Sheppard and Addington. Go ahead.
That the preliminary report be approved, subject to the notice area of the community consultation meeting being expanded to include, in addition to the 120-meter radius notice area, all landowners and residents residing in the area bounded by both sides of Addington Greenbelt and Elmhurst Avenue to the north, Welbeck Road and Fennell Street to the east, Points Avenue to the south, and Brentwood Avenue and Easton Road to the west, and that the applicant pay the city for the costs associated with extending the notice area.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. For item 7, Councillor Shiner, will it be a quick item? Okay, so how many people to speak?
Mine are...
Okay, if there's only one person to speak on item 7, could you get ready and we'll hear you next? Make sure and register with the clerk. Next is 15. Lanark Avenue. Councillor Cole?
I'll move staff recommendation.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 16. Eugene Street.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 17. Ashbury Avenue.
Again, I'm moving the staff recommendation.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 18. Kenton Drive. Councillor Fillion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 21, reopening of North York Community Council item, change of parking regulations on Hillmount Avenue between Marley Avenue and Danesbury Avenue.
I'm just going to hold that for another few minutes, if
Okay.
you don't mind, Madam Chair.
And 22.
I will move the staff recommendation.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, so is there someone here for item 7? You could speak now. OPA and zoning amendment applications, Bayview and 630 Sheppard Avenue East.
My name is Victoria Jolly. The last name is spelled J like John, O-L-Y. My email address is bva, like Bravo Victor Alpha, dot mag like George A, at gmail.com. My mailing address is... You got it? Okay, great. Thank you, Madam Chair. I am here as chair of the Municipal and Government Affairs Committee of Bayview Village Association. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present on behalf of our residents to council today. I stand here representing more than 1,000 residents and ratepayers of Bayview Village to express the overwhelming community majority that are very strongly opposed to the height and density of the Quadrille Properties Group proposal to amend the official plan, and we ask North York Community Council to act on behalf of the community as a whole. Bayview Village Mall was opened in 1963, and at the time was an open-air shopping center catering to our local community and residents. Now, 55 years later, this mall is as much a community treasure as it is a vital amenity to the residents and community stakeholders. Our community has spent time prior to our comments this morning, reviewing the Sheppard East Subway Corridor Secondary Plan against the quad rail proposal, and we'd like to present 3 key areas of objection for your consideration. Number 1, the negative impact of the height and density proposed for the south zone of the proposal comprises of 2 towers, one of 33 stories and one of 28 stories, connected by an 8-story podium. Firstly, given the high volume of recently completed and proposed condo development along Sheppard Avenue East, we really fail to understand how these 2 additional condo towers and the residential density in this format are really needed given the units currently in the pipeline to be built along Sheppard Avenue. Further, we understand that the 2 towers on the south zone may meet the allowable massing within the Sheppard East Subway Secondary Plan. However, the residents want you to know that they vehemently oppose the contextual fit to the community. The shadowing, the sightline obstruction to the mall is significant. The 6-story mixed-use building that are proposed versus the current 3-story buildings to the northern perimeter of this site are also concerning us. The development will effectively turn Bayview Mews Lane, the street between Bayview Mills Apartments, and the new proposed northern perimeter of Bayview Village Mall, will turn it into a narrowing tunnel effect. It will exacerbate the shadowing and the sightline obstructions consistent with the components of the other parts of this proposal. Finally, the 19-story residential tower well exceeds the allowable 3-story height, again in this northern site of Bayview Village Mall site. Finally, the retail development, or redevelopment, I apologize, turns a successful enclosed shopping center into an open-air, new format retail center. Comparable new format shopping centers in our area have really seen differing levels of consumer patronage and usage. And we're very concerned of turning a very successful retail mall in its current format to something that will be less used and less successful by the community. We want to close by expressing our hope and trust that Quadrille will be receptive to working with the Bayview Village Association and the Municipal and Government Affairs Committee to include parkland dedications, open public space that could be designated to be inviting and useful to our residents, insisting on green space, well-maintained trees, flowers, some seasonal outdoor staging and decorating programs that really meet the diversity of our community resident population. Much better lighting for evenings and early morning walk fits. They'll be giving up the indoor walking program to an outdoor walking program. They want to make sure that it's safe and usable year-round. The availability of community meeting space and gathering. And they'd like some input on the selection of public art installations and a requirement contributing artists for this public art to be exclusively former and current residents of Bayview Village. Perhaps free Wi-Fi and kiosks that can make the use of this public space for performances in our immediate area. We thank you for the opportunity to put a voice to the residents of Bayview Village.
Thank you. If you could just stay up there for a moment. We have a question of you. Councillor Pasternak?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Are you aware that we're not giving any approvals for this project today? All we would do is approving a community consultation?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure you knew that. We're not at the approval stage for this development yet.
I understand that.
Okay, fair enough.
I understand you have a motion, Councillor Shiner?
I don't have any questions for you, Ms.
You may be seated. Thank you.
Thank you.
So if I can help my colleagues out here in 2 regards. One, I have a motion for an expanded notification area, which I have to put up first.
Expanded notification area? Francine, do we have the expanded notification
do.
Okay, we have it.
Okay, so basically, it expands the notification area from the Don River Valley on the east, Finch in the north, Bayview on the west, and to the 401 to the south, and puts notification out to them. I will have to work with my colleague, Councillor Fillion, to find some way to include his, because at this time, I'd like to start the notification area first in this. With some of the local area groups, this is going to be some very large meetings, and I have multiple residence groups there. They're all welcome to attend, but I didn't want to extend it all the way over to as far as Willowdale, because it'll get too large of a group to be able to work with. And speaking to, and I will work with my colleague to get some further notifications out in that area, and we will get the applicant to pay for them in the future. But it's in this regards, and thank you, Ms. Jolly. We haven't met before for coming. I know the area well. I know the official plan well. I guess you could say I'm probably the architect of many of the clauses in the official plan that were there to try to protect the local communities as development went forward. So I know what's in there. I know every single development that's been approved well. And I know every appeal that's been made to the Ontario Municipal Board and the arguments that have been made over them. This site actually has, if you look at the plan, redevelopment potential approved on it in the southwest corner, and it was supposed to be similar to the development that's there along the strip right now, which I understand. It also permits some additional development in the north. But the property has been purchased by another company who is looking for intensification on the site, and some intensification will be permitted on it, most likely a little different than what was proposed before, and it'll be a phased approach to it. The applicant as well did reach out last year to the community, have an open house, which they invited people to up on Bayview to get their input, and did do some pre-consultation meetings. Since they filed their application, staff have made it clear to them, now that it's an official application, that process now rests with the city through the planning department and coordinating through my office to coordinate those meetings where we can start to get some input. And the Bayview Village Association is one of the important ratepayers groups that are there. For those of you that have worked with me, I work with the residents in the Bayview Village Association. I work with the tenants group over at the Three Sisters. I work with the residents that are in New York Towers, our condominium friends, and I work with the residents that are over in the Concord site, and in between, there's another residence group in the low-rise. So I have 5 residence groups that I'm sure will be quite interested in this. We will be working together on these, and in regards to the area to the west of Bayview, I will work with my colleague, Councillor Fillion, to have an additional meeting, to have notification given out, and an opportunity to show the plan to those residents so we can try to coordinate between it. So we will be taking those in mind. However, it's going to be a long process. It'll be a process where I'm sure the applicant would like to work in phases, and it'll be a process where everyone has to be included. It's a major redevelopment that's been asked for, if any of you have looked at the plans on the corner. So it will take some time, it'll take some work, and we'll try and come out to a reasonable solution that will at least address most of the concerns that other residents have. And as I said, Councillor, I will work with the staff to get a notification area out for that. But I do not want that many people trying to fit into the gymnasium that we're going to have over at Bayview. We'll do it at Bayview Middle School at first because it just won't fit.
Councillor Carroll is next.
Well, I think I'm really just asking the question that the bordering councillor is going to ask. You are in effect on the Bayview boundary reducing what is allowed by policy. By making your boundary Bayview, you're actually moving it closer to the site than the 120 meters allows.
In addition to the 120 meters.
In addition to the 120 meters. So the developer would pay for at least some notification west of Bayview.
I'm sure, as the developer has been very open and coming and trying to work with the city, I'm sure he will pay for an additional public meeting and the circulation of that, which I will work with my colleague to try and have that, so his residents can come in with their concerns. My problem is, I know the gymnasium at Bayview Middle School is gonna be filled in out the doors.
Right, I was just wondering
So-
who's paying for it. He kept saying work with staff, but
No, no,
the developer knows that there'll be.
This is a pension fund, it's
something.
BCIMC
Okay.
and Quad Rail. They will pay for it, they've been upfront, they've paid for their own meeting notifications.
Right.
And if they don't, I will be assured that they will pay for it for you, Councillor Fillion.
Well,
I'll-
that's
I'll
really
make sure that I
interesting.
correct.
Councillor Fillion to speak.
No, the question for Councillor Shatter. So Councillor Shatter, I'm sorry we didn't discuss this ahead of time. I did get my office was contacted by your office, and we gave them extended boundaries. So, yes, so, I mean, what this does is essentially, I will hold my own meeting. It's this, I would prefer to have a discussion with you about whether it's better to have everybody at one meeting or two separate meetings. And I don't know what the right answer to that is, but if this goes through this way, then I would contact the applicant and have my own meeting for my residents, because I can't have, a small number of my residents knowing about this massive development very close to them and others not. So
Your question
this
is?
just doesn't work.
Yeah, but in response to your question, because the notification area that your staff recommended and you didn't review with me was so large, it would have been impossible to hold the meeting. So in due respect, if you would have called me and sat with me to look at the area, I would have tried to do that. But they were more than doubling the notification.
We
people
got
would have
asked
been-
what we'd like the boundaries to be, and we
Well-
answered the question. Anyway, I don't want to have a argument here. It's just, I don't support this. I'm not going to amend it here now, because it's in your ward, but if this passes, then I would just hold my own, contact the applicant and do my own consultation, rather than, I don't disagree with you that one location might be too large. I'm just sure it's not productive to have.
Then I
two
look
different,
forward to hearing your suggestion when this item goes forward, and I'll, as I said, when I comment, I will be more than happy to coordinate
Okay,
a second meeting.
why don't we put staff
goes
on
to
the
council,
floor?
right?
I understand that there are questions of
I'll
staff.
deal with it between now and council.
Councillor Carroll, to question staff.
Yeah, I'm sorry to do this to the local councillor when it's a preliminary report, but I think it's important to just ask the question of staff, and especially if the applicant has a representative here today. This has the potential. I have a real appreciation for Councillor Shiner wanting to keep the conversation in sort of working group size. Bayview Village ratepayers have already made the approaches and put a lot of thought into this, so you'll have a really high-functioning working group. But my question of staff is, if this becomes Shops at Don Mills, and I think you know what I mean, that kept growing until they ended up in the Inn on the Park ballroom for the final consultation. If that happens, has there already been conversation with the applicant such that they know they're going to have to help if we end up having to have something that makes this application more of a citywide nature? Because everyone is concerned, even over in my area. They're not asking to be part of the notice area, but they are wondering, what does this application in Bayview Village Mall mean to Fairview Mall, mean to other places? It could grow.
So through you, Madam Chair, we've definitely had that discussion with the applicant. In fact, we've reeled them back. They had already scheduled 3 working group meetings over the last 2 weeks, which we were informed 3 days before they started. So we canceled those meetings, particularly raising the points that you've all raised this morning, in that there will be large interest for this. So we've definitely told them that, and we will likely be having discussions with them about a larger format or how we go about scheduling subsequent working group meetings, without creating an unwieldy process. But they're certainly aware of that.
So if we vote for this motion today, they're not going to hang their hat on that and say forget it. This can over time more.
This is not the last opportunity for consultation.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Fillion?
So if this motion passes as is, and I want to send out a notice, can I get the applicant to pay for it?
I think we may want to amend the motion to include that direction. I'm sure, I don't want to guarantee, but I'm sure the applicant would be willing to do that, to hold a second public meeting if that's what you wish, but I would suggest amending the motion so that we have that direction.
Thank you.
All right, speakers. Councillor Fillion.
Well, I guess I would ask to hold this down because I don't have the a boundary change that I'd proposed with me. I had given that to
Madam
my staff to
Speaker.
give to Councillor Shiner's staff, so I don't have it with me.
Madam Speaker,
We can hold it down to the end of the meeting.
not necessary. The applicant will pay for additional notification. He will work to organize a second meeting so we can bring in Councillor Fillion's community, and we will in the end have some joint meetings. This is the first meeting, and Councillor Fillion, if he won't pay for it, I'll pay for it out of my office budget for you. I'm not worried about getting a notification out. This is simply the first meeting, and it won't, in addition to that, it won't close it down for anyone else being able to come into the meeting. But I strongly suggest for any of you that have worked on shops with Don Mills, that you allow this to at least be a functional first meeting as we go forward to talk about what's there, because the concerns that you've already heard from the ratepayer group are going to be exemplified by all the residents that show up in this room there, and there's no sense getting a meeting that goes from Willowdale to Leslie Street, from 401 to Finch, because you won't get anything done. You have to structure this, and I will make sure that's done and work with my colleague on it as well, and I know the applicant will
Thank
as
you.
well.
Councillor Fillion?
Well, I've asked that it be held down. I'd
All
like
right,
to
we're
look
going to
at
hold
that.
down this
I'd like to
item
speak
till
to the
later in the
applicant.
meeting. Please, let's get to item 1. Councillor Shiner, item 1 is in your ward. I understand there's a speaker, Jason Park. And I understand there is only one speaker to this item. If you're here to speak on any item, please register with the clerk beforehand. Go ahead, sir.
Morning, Madam Chair, members of council. My name is Jason Park. I'm counsel for the applicant 1580 Avenue Road Limited. I want to first off thank staff for and the council for working with us with respect to this development proposal. We're generally in agreement with all of the content set out in the report. And
Sir, are you not here for item 1?
Sorry, no, I'm here for item actually 3.
Good work, good job. Please sit down. Okay. Item 1. Is there anyone here for item 1, which is 1580 Avenue Road? Councillor
it's not.
Shiner.
No, it's item 1 is 3390, 3392, 3394,
Oh, my
3396,
God.
3398 Bayview Avenue.
I'm so sorry.
I know you don't like me to correct you, so no disrespect. And that is a development application, a final report.
I'm
zoning-
sorry. Item 1 is Bayview, but it's another number on Bayview. 3390 to 3398. And no one is here for that item. Councillor Shiner, please move a motion.
So I am moving the staff recommendations.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 2. Councillor Carroll, I understand there's someone from your community who is here to depute, who is not on our list. Anna. Can't read the last name, sorry.
It's Anna Weinveen.
Yes.
Hi.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. My name is Anna Weinveen. I'm the planning consultant for the applicant, Emerald City Developments 5, Inc., and I'm a planner at Bousfields. I just wanted to be brief and indicate that we have reviewed the final staff report, and we are in support of the recommendations of the report. But I also wanted to note on record that this morning I noticed an error in the attached official plan amendment that was attached to the final staff report as attachment 13. In the official plan amendment, it states that the area of the lands is 8.03 hectares, and I just wanted to note that the area of the lands is actually 8.3 hectares. So I would like to note that, and I believe that we'll have time to make this change prior to City Council.
Thank you. I understand that there's another speaker representing the Henry Farm community.
Yes,
All right,
I'm here.
thank you. Go ahead.
Good morning. I'm Dunja Lakovic. I'm a resident in Henry Farm community and the secretary of Henry Farm Community Interest Association. I'm making the presentation on behalf of the executive of the association. The Henry Farm Community Interest Association represents 1,050 residences, 600 single-family homes, and 450 rental units in Henry Farm. Our neighborhood is located directly to the west of the site subject to this development. I brought a petition, and the petition was filed with Councillor Carroll's office in September. I brought a petition from the residents of Henry Farm community opposing the latest developer's request to add another 405 units to Block C of the Parkway Forest development, which is underway at the southeast corner of Sheppard and Don Mills. Block C is located immediately south of Helen Lou Road. This change will increase the number of residential units in Block C to 920 from the 515 previously approved, or a 78% increase. Current increase requested for residential units in the development of Parkway Forest area is at a total of 4,734, increased from 4,334 units. Parkway Forest area is already among the most densely populated areas in Toronto. The approval of any additional units will only increase the pressure on our community. Here are some of the reasons for our objection. The process of adding additional units at each phase of the development, once the initial approval has been established, is most unfair, and particularly since all units approved have already been built and the space originally allocated for a food store, for instance. I'm missing my page. And the for the food store, also assigned in Block C, is now converted to residential space instead. Therefore, this request for an increased number of residential units in Block C. In 2004, the developer originally applied for the construction of 3,600 new units. In 2008, the Ontario Municipal Board gave approval for 2,200 new units. In 2014, the developer requested an additional 600 units, and the OMB approved 591. And the latest request would add another 405 units. The local school is bursting at seams. There is no room for expansion to accommodate student enrollment. There have been 6 portable classrooms added already. The LEA consulting traffic study commissioned by Henry Farms Association and submitted to the city in 2015 states that the intersections at Don Mills and Sheppard and Highway 404 and Sheppard are beyond capacity. The conclusions in this study report were established long before any units were approved or completed in the Parkway Forest development project. The traffic congestion in this area has become unbearable already, and the accumulation of additional units will make the traffic congestion even worse. No new road or public transportation infrastructure has been built since the original proposal. The association also wanted me to add that there is an allocation of $500,000 for community benefit, which has not been built or utilized, and we want to make sure that that money is earmarked for other community projects. On behalf of those who have signed the petition, we request our community council and ultimately our city council to reject this latest request for additional units in Block C of the Parkway Forest development.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Carroll.
Well, I just wanted to make sure, because I didn't have a chance to review the association's presentation ahead of time. I'm not sure if you're aware of the change in the school as a result of the recent grade redistribution. We visited with them before coming to the report. The 6 portables are now not in use. 3 are in use, and 2 of them for storage. And some of the classroom space inside the school is now being used as before and after school care space by the Y daycare, because that's not needed as classroom space. So I'm not sure whether or not the association was up to date on that.
Possibly we were not up to date,
Yeah, the grade redistribution has helped a great deal with that. And the monies negotiated as a result of this development have not yet been spent on further expansion of the school. They're held in reserve because they're finding they may not need it for classroom space and may use it for activity space or special purpose rooms. They're waiting to see how the enrollment levels out. Was the association aware of that?
No.
Okay, so we're going to put in writing what the principal said. I'm also wondering if the association had a look at the latest traffic study, which does say that admittedly that intersections are at capacity, but this approval allows further work, the final work that will be done, but does not recommend the original turning lane because they've found that far fewer cars have arrived in the neighborhood on a per unit basis than originally anticipated.
We all need to be there about 3:30, 4:30 every day.
Yeah.
To witness what's happening.
Yeah, I've been there, yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
You may
Okay.
be seated.
Yeah.
Councillor Carroll, you have a motion for us to consider?
I do, Madam Speaker, but I don't have a copy of it here.
Francine,
I'm wondering
do you
if it
have
could
the
be put up
motion?
on the screen. I haven't had a chance.
We're going to be putting it up on the
Okay.
screen.
I haven't had a chance to show this to staff. So, Madam Speaker, this looks like a very mysterious thing. This is a motion because we're doing a zoning amendment today. This zoning amendment would be to do with Block B in the same zoning bylaw, the Parkway Forest Sheppard Avenue secondary plan zoning bylaw, to add a permitted use to a specific area in Block B of the project. Are we okay? Yes, we are okay. So, Madam Speaker, I'll speak to it now. This is the final block of a massive development. And the reason that we find ourselves looking at additional units, and this could happen to other councillors as well, is that when this development was adopted, what was contemplated was doing it in 7 phases, putting holds on each of the phases, and reviewing at the end of each phase what is the impact as we go along, both in terms of traffic, in terms of who's buying, what's the profile, are they riding transit. The success in this development is that by and large they're traveling by transit. There are some cars in the parking garage, but they are not leaving the garage Monday through Friday in large percentages. There are also a lot of empty parking spots in the garage of the completed development. Some of the areas have been converted after the rental replacements were done, and the developer learned that purpose-built rental was actually a big need in Toronto and a need that has a profit margin. Some of the developments within the 7 phases were converted from condo to purpose-built rental, which is another big gain for the city in terms of increasing that area for us. There were affordable housing allowances for rental allowed. What this does is add to that some affordable ownership. Admittedly, only 9 units. I would have loved to have seen more, but this means that within Parkway Forest, throughout the building boom, we have affordable rental, we have some rent geared to income rental in 121, and now we have some affordable ownership as well. The number of additional units has been reduced to 390, but as much as the community group that you've just heard would like to see that reduced, the grocery store that is going into this development was a big request of that same community group. And in negotiations of trying to reduce the units, we were going to end up, in fact, having to forego the grocery store. The units that are being added now make the grocery store viable. What will happen is you will see more residents than initially approved, but not more cars. These are people that are by and large taking transit. We've got a big empty parking garage. The biggest impacts and the biggest things we have to deal with in this neighborhood right now are temporary. The biggest concern in this neighborhood, something that they deal with in downtown council all the time, but we're dealing with in Parkway Forest in ways no one ever has before, and that is construction. These are downtown types of density, so we have construction parking causing difficulty in the brand new community center, causing difficulty around the new development, and causing difficulty in surrounding neighborhoods, including Henry Farm. So those are the things that subsequent to today's approval, we're going to be working on having a parking plan. There'll be parking prohibitions added to Henry Farm, added to Parkway Forest, particularly around the school for safety, and a plan worked out for where, in fact, Block C construction workers should be made to park in order to make this livable. But the 2 years of construction, 2 to 3 that will happen here, represent the final phase of Parkway Forest and the resulting neighborhood afterwards. If you read the report, you will see the net benefits to the neighborhood that have come from this. We've stayed under the 4 times density, which helps in applications such as item number 7 that we just dealt with, to stay under the 4. Helps negotiate all future plans along Sheppard Avenue. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. We're ready for the vote on Councillor Carroll's motion. Okay, well, we'll include it as a package then. What's up on the board? All right, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. That was very thoughtful. Item 3. Mr. Park, I apologize. You forgiving me?
I forgive you 100%.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Good morning once again. Once again, it's Jason Park. I'm counsel for the applicant, 1580 Avenue Road Limited. I wanted to, first off by saying, I wanted to thank staff and Councillor Carmichael Greb for their work with respect to getting us to this point in terms of the final report. We're in general agreement with most of the recommendations and contents of the final report, save and except one of the recommendation, which is recommendation number 3, which deals with the 45-degree angular plane being required off of the midpoint from Avenue Road. I would just point out this site is subject to 4 different angular planes. We meet the 45-degree angular planes on the south side, the north side, and the west side. But on the Avenue road side, there is a slight encroachment at the levels 5 to 7 with respect to keeping that. And I would just note a couple things with respect to that. That angular plane is atypical of what you see in the rest of the city of Toronto. It was obviously came apart as part of the Avenue Road Avenue study, but my understanding is it's a remnant from the old former City of North York zoning bylaw 7625. But basically, throughout most of the city of Toronto, that angular plane on an avenue in the mid-rise guidelines is actually taken on the opposite side of the road. And if that principle was applied, or that guideline was applied in this case, we would actually be well within that 43-degree angular plane. In terms of what City Council has done with respect to that, I would also note that City Council did provide an exemption for a site just 3 blocks north on Avenue Road, where they provided an exemption from a similar intrusion that was provided, and this was only in February of 2014. That's what I'm going to be asking the Community Council endorse in this case and remove a recommendation 3. And I understand the area councillor, Councillor Carmichael Greb, will be bringing a motion in that regard, which we would support. The only other thing I would just point out is that in all other respects, city staff supports the heightened density that's being proposed here. In terms of the process, it's been a fairly long process. We've engaged in pre-consultation studies as back from September of 2015, and it's been about an 18-month planning application process. So our client agreed to have this report come to this meeting on the understanding we would work with staff to get the bills in for the November 6th, 7th, and 8th council meeting, and which will work with city legal staff and city planning staff to work in that regard. And there's a number of Section 37 benefits that my clients agreed to provide and agreed to. They have no qualms with the level of the Section 37 benefits, and there's a number of streetscape improvements and boulevard improvements that are going to be engaged. There's also a park that's a publicly accessible parkette. It's going to be owned on public land, which is located just to the south on unopened public road allowance. But my client has agreed to construct it and to maintain it, even though it will be in public ownership. So subject to any questions that the councilors may have, those are all my submissions.
Thank you for that moving address. Are there any questions for the deputant? No? Thank you very much.
Yeah, my name is France Rochette, and I'm the chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was trying to read this handwriting here. I thought it was hieroglyphics. Great. Thank you very much. You have 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm the chair of the Old Orchard Grove Resident Association, Ratepayers Association. We did write a letter to the council on this matter, and there's 2 points I'd like to bring up. And the first one, of course, is the one that was deputed a moment ago, which is the 45-degree angle. The community feels very strongly about the 45-degree angle. It's been one of the key principles of the Avenue Road study that was put in place in 2009. This is one of the really key points we feel is key to maintaining the character of Avenue Road. Recently, the councillor was good enough to allow a special bylaw to reinforce or put in force a 45-degree angle on the side streets. This was something the councillor really did for the community, because the community feels very strongly that it's a key element of maintaining the character. It's important, of course, on all the other sides of the property, as the other deputant mentioned, because of the adjacency to the community and to the neighborhood, but it's also very important on the Avenue Road side because of, you know, the commercial activity that is on Avenue Road and the consistency of the look of the building. One of our concerns is that the moment you allow variation on this 45-degree angle on one building, then other ones will follow and it will change the character. This is a point that's very sensitive with the community. I believe it was also highlighted in the letter that was sent to the council by Sarah, which is the South Armor Heights Resident Association, which is on the other side of Avenue Road. And so we're both very aligned on that. So the 45-degree angle is one of the variances we feel very strongly should not be granted. The only other point I want to mention is on Section 37 money. We feel that a best practice would be to involve the community in the decisions that are made with Section 37 money, and we would like to ask the councillor to move that the Section 37 money decisions be made in collaboration with the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, my apologies for having to leave the room. I'm just dealing with some family issues today. I hope everyone is understanding. And Councillor Pasternak is a very good vice chair. Any other speakers? Councillor Carmichael Greb.
Thank you. I have a motion, please. Yep. That City Council adopt the staff recommendations in the report, and that recommendation 1 be amended by deleting the word subject to refinements to address recommendation 3, and that recommendation 3 be deleted. The intrusion of the 45-degree angular plane is very minimal on this development. It is a really good development. We've been working with the developer for over a year now on getting a building that will be fabulous for the community. This intrusion, it doesn't impact sunlight, it doesn't impact Avenue Road at all. There is already precedent up the street at the Brookdale development, and there will also be a boutique beer store on the main floor, which I think most of the community is very excited about. So we're moving to the next stage of this, and I want to thank the planning staff for working with me on this. Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Please turn to the additional items. Councillor Burnside's item 30, Broadway Avenue. He's moving it. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Burnside's item, I'm sorry, that's item 31 is going to be held, right? Right. And we'll try to do that next. Okay. Councillor Pasternak, Wilmington Avenue, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Fillion, representation at the lab, 90 Johnson, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Fillion, representation at the lab for 169 Goulding, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. One person raised their hand that time. That's good. Councillor Fillion, representation at the lab for 116 Bogart, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. And Councillor Pasternak is moving on behalf of Councillor Shiner a new item, non-for-profit resident fee for Willowdale Group of Artists to be distributed. Item to be distributed. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, Councillor Burnside, you have speakers to item 31. Is it a quick item? Tanager Avenue, is it one speaker? How many are there? One? If it's just one, we can do it now. 5? No, I'm sorry, we can't do it now. Okay, so item 4, please. Item 4, 25 St. Denis Drive. I have 3 people listed to speak. Mohammed Ibrahim, not here. Mark Flowers, yes. Welcome, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of council. My name is Mark Flowers. I'm a lawyer with Davies Howe, and I represent the applicant in this matter. I don't propose to respond to each of the comments in the staff report given the limited time, but I do want to focus on a few key topics. Let me begin by noting that the proposal, which consists of 2 new buildings on the site and retains the existing apartment building, would achieve many of the city's planning objectives. First, the proposal represents intensification and investment in the Flemington Park community, which is one of the city's priority neighborhoods, one that has seen very little development in the last several decades. The proposed development, in fact, may act as a catalyst for further private investment in this neighborhood. Second, all of the proposed new residential units would be rental, and we heard even Councillor Carroll earlier talk about the importance of rental units in the city. Third, the application seeks to add a significant number of new, larger family-size units to the city's rental housing stock. Roughly 50% of the units would be 2-bedroom or larger, and 20% of the units are proposed to be 3-bedroom as compared to the city's typical target of 10% 3-bedroom units. The staff report, in the staff report, city staff is critical of the height and built form of the proposed south building, which fronts onto Grenoble Drive at 44 stories, noting that the tallest existing apartment building in the neighborhood is 28 stories. There are, in fact, buildings in the range of approximately 40 stories, both existing and approved in the broader area, but we also think it's inappropriate to base an appropriate height for the proposed new development on the heights of existing apartment buildings in the immediate area. For one thing, as I mentioned, Flemington Park has seen very little development activity in the last several decades. Most of the existing apartment buildings in the area, including the one on the subject site, date from the 1960s. They're slab-type buildings built several decades ago in a form that was referred to as Tower in the Park, a design that may have been popular at that time, but which today, even the city's own tall building guidelines recognize as a built form we should not be attempting to emulate. Staff report also recommends a new north-south public road along the west boundary of the property. Specifically, staff is recommending a 14-meter wide right-of-way from our client's site in order to establish ultimately a 20-meter public road if and when the neighboring property to the west ever redevelops. Although our proposal contemplates a north-south publicly accessible pedestrian connection from St. Denis Drive to Grenoble at this location, we have concerns with staff's recommendation for a full new public road cutting through the site. First, there's no identification of this new road in the city's official plan. Second, we don't believe there's any need or justification for the proposed new road from a traffic operations perspective, and I would note that the staff report, in fact, agrees with our client's traffic impact statement that the local road network can handle the additional traffic. Third, there may be public opposition to staff's proposal from existing members of the neighborhood. I can tell you that I attended at the community council meeting last year. I recall some of the residents expressing concern about our proposal, which proposes just a driveway serving one new building at the southwest corner of the property. It's opposite an elementary school on the other side of the street. So if the residents are concerned about a driveway in this location, I can only imagine what they might say if they're aware that city staff actually wants a full new public road. And then finally, staff is recommending an on-site public park in the southeast corner of the property, which would measure approximately 45 meters along Grenoble. The size of the park that's proposed is presumably based primarily on the scale of the south tower, which is obviously larger of the two buildings. However, if the city were to take a park of this size in this location, it would likely negate the ability to develop a tall building in this location. The property today has 88 meters of frontage on Grenoble. Thus, at 45 meters, the proposed park would occupy more than half of that frontage. In addition, as I mentioned, city staff is requesting a 14-meter new public road along the west boundary. The report also notes staff would be seeking 5-meter setbacks, both from the park and the new road, and as well, the city typically looks for minimum stepbacks of 3 meters for the tower portion of a building above a podium. So when you do the math, you add 45 meters for a public park, 14 meters for the road, 2 5-meter setbacks, 2 3-meter stepbacks, that totals 75 meters of the 88-meter frontage, leaving just 13 meters for a proposed tall building in this location. At 13 meters, that's simply not a viable building dimension in this instance. It would in fact negate the ability to construct a tall building in this location. Of course, given staff's opposition to the proposed height, maybe that's the intention. But if there is no tall building in this location, then there's really no need for the public park, and there may not be then an ability to get a north-south public road. So what this exercise demonstrates is that if we are to find a solution for the redevelopment of the property, there needs to be some flexibility.
Don't mean to cut you off, but you have exceeded the time limit. Did you want to wrap up?
Sure. I'm literally just got less than a minute left. So we remain of the view...
A lot less than a minute.
Okay. We remain of the view the current proposal is appropriate. We therefore request council reject the staff recommendation to oppose the application. We do, however, believe that a solution could be achieved, and as a result, we have presented staff with an alternative without prejudice proposal that we believe addresses many of the issues identified in the staff report. So if council ultimately agrees with staff to reject the current proposal, we would ask that council give due consideration to this alternative proposal. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate the indulgence, Mr.
Great,
Chair.
thank you very much. Any questions for the deputant? No? Thank you very much.
I think Councilor Burnside.
Councilor Burnside.
Thank you. Through you. Sorry, what's the parkland you're suggesting?
Pardon me?
The park space, parkland that you're suggesting or proposing on the site?
As part of the original application?
Whatever it is.
Well, we've identified various locations where there could be parkland. We have asked for some flexibility from staff in recognition that there could be, as an example, below-grade parking below the park. Again, there's a willingness to look at options. The problem is that the staff recommendation, which I've gone through and I'm not going to repeat, basically puts a park in a location that would negate the ability to do actually the development that's proposed. Therefore, you wouldn't need the park. So it ends up kind of a bit of a circular argument.
Right, but you understand that parkland is one of the big concerns in this high-density neighborhood, correct?
I recognize that, and as I say, there is a willingness on our client's part to look at park alternatives on site. We've indicated that through the original application, although I can't get into details about the more recent without prejudice proposal, it contemplates parkland as well.
Okay, fair enough. Amenity space, what were you proposing in that regard? 'Cause
Amenity space, if you're looking for the exact numbers, it is set out in the staff report. I'd literally have to go through and pick the numbers.
Well, those are two key issues in the community, which you'd be well aware of, given that your client already has 2 buildings there, correct?
One building.
One building.
Yeah, there's one building, 17-story apartment building.
Right.
So certainly the proposal is for amenity space in the new development that would be available both for the existing residents as well as the new residents and the existing residents. As well, it's not typically referred to as amenity space, but we are proposing as well in the south building some retail space and possibly a daycare that could then serve the broader community as well, not just the residents on site.
So right now, it's all private space, correct?
The entire property is private space.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So only one other speaker on this item? Joff Cattell? Not here? Okay, we can go to speakers. Councillor Burnside, did you have a motion? Okay, staff recommendation has been moved. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. So that was item 4. Councillor Pasternak, I understand that you're ready to deal with item 12.
Yes.
So would councillors please turn to item 12, which is, I'm sorry,
It is a stop sign.
Always Stop Control Antibes North-South segment at Antibes Drive, eastbound one-way segment.
Just a quick question for staff, and then I'll speak.
Okay, staff to the floor, please.
Just a couple of quick questions for staff. The circled area, is that where the request has gone in by the community for an all-way stop?
That is correct, Councillor.
Now, just to the north of that is a similar intersection. My records indicate that there's an all-way stop at the, just north of there, at the same sort of mirror image intersection across the Parquet.
Yes, that is also correct.
Now, the reason we have a negative staff report is because of the proximity of the request for the new stop and the existing all-way stop. Is that part of the problem?
Yes, part of the problem is that the proximity to the adjacent crossing is quite some standard, as well as the fact that the destination on the west side, the community center, can be accessed by the existing stop at the north intersection.
Right. But I guess the natural walkway, would you concur to the buildings in the lower right-hand corner of the image would be to take the southern crossover and then walk through the parking lot and back to their homes?
Yes, our studies did disclose that many pedestrians are crossing at the south intersection via the driveway on the west side.
Now, I have a petition here of dozens of names requesting this stop sign. Have you seen this petition?
Yes, we just received it this morning.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions of staff? Councillor Carroll.
So, when you have the two stop signs this close together, it's awkward to put this directly into the report, so I'm putting you on the spot. But just answering verbally, what are the dangers of two stop signs? Is it that they will run one stop sign, both stop signs? There are dangers in putting in two stop signs, are there not?
Yes, when two controls are in such close proximity to one another, there is the danger that motorists may disregard them or view both simultaneously, so that it could introduce motorist confusion.
Okay, and the collision history here, do you have the details of the collision? There's been one collision. No one ever agrees with the warrant of there need to be 9 in 3 years. We always respond to our community faster than that. But in the case here, there's been only one in 3 years. Do we know the nature of it?
No, Councillor, I don't have the specific details at hand. But it would have been considered to be potentially preventable, so that would be a right-of-way conflict, either a side street motorist or pedestrian attempting to turn onto the main street.
Okay, and the only place where this does meet the warrants is vehicle volumes. It is actually over the warrant for volumes of vehicle going through the intersection. But if there are 447 cars going through here in the average hour, where do they queue between the two stop signs? If they go through one, where do the 447 cars queue up between two stop signs?
Well, that's just it. They would exceed the available storage, I guess, in some instances.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, to speak, Councillor Pasternak. Councillor Pasternak?
Yes.
Councillor Pasternak?
Yes, can I speak from here?
We're supportive. Do you want to?
Oh.
Okay.
Well,
I'm supportive.
I don't want to talk my way into defeat. Can we do a straw poll? No?
Our
I have a motion to approve the stop sign, if the clerk can put it on the screen. The reason this has become a high-risk intersection is because the mirror image of that intersection just to the north has an always stop. And people mistakenly believe an always stop exists at the southern intersection. To the left on your screen of the intersection at issue here is the Antibes Community Center, a very high volume usage community center which has a lot of young people using it, families with kids, and they traverse the southern part of this intersection with the mistaken belief that there's also an always stop there as well. And they're trying to get back to their homes, which sit at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. So I'm asking, and there's a petition here with dozens of names, I'm asking for your support in putting the always stop. Every time I go to the Antibes Community Center, people come up to me constantly, they ask for it because of near misses. It's true, the warrants don't show that, but I think anecdotally we can justify the safety measure.
So, Councillor Pasternak, stay there, please. There's a question of you, Councillor Carroll.
So, it's item number 12. So I'm just wondering, Councillor Burnside, not to put you on the spot, but you are moving a motion now, Councillor Pasternak. Was there discussion of, because this has happened in the past, was there discussion of relocating the stop sign instead of duplicating the stop sign?
I don't think we've discussed removing the northern stop sign. As I'm sure you know, removing a stop sign is a fairly lengthy and complex process. Once it's in, it's hard to remove. But no discussion has taken place about removing the northern stop sign. The residents like it. In fact, we're scheduled to paint lines there in the spring.
Right. The residents like the stop sign that's there.
They like the stop sign because many of the residents walk to the community center, travel with their young children for various gymnastics and swimming lessons, things that take place in the community center, as well as young people on their own, teenagers and so forth, that play tennis and basketball there.
But that's my point. It seems Antibes is now the community center is now the victim of its own success.
It's a very busy place, and unfortunately, people who arrive at that northern little intersection with the four-way stop mistakenly believe that when they leave, the same protections are there at that southern intersection, and that's the problem we seem to be facing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have Councillor Pasternak's motion on the screen. All in favor? Opposed? We have a recorded vote, please. Councillor Pasternak's motion on the screen. All in favor? Councillor Filion, Councillor Pasternak, Councillor Ajamari, Councillor Cole. Opposed? Councillors Burnside, Shiner, Carroll, Carmichael, Greb, and Peruzza. It loses. Does not carry. A motion to adopt staff recommendations. Councillor Shiner. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. I thought we did. I'm sorry. Item 25, please, is next. Turn on your mic, please.
Item number 7.
Item number 7, please. Quick item.
So we were talking about the notification area. So I have amended my motion.
Okay, Councillor Shiner's amended motion.
I didn't read it. So as we can hold 2 separate meetings, the notification area that the councillor on the west side, Councillor Filion, is satisfied with, and that we can deal with them on a separate occasion, but the notice and the meetings will be paid for by the applicant.
And is there another speaker?
Is Mr. Wu here?
Toby Wu? No? Okay.
I heard he had registered, but I didn't see him here.
No. All right then. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 25. Is there anyone here to speak to item 25, which is the proposed naming of a public street at 1185 Eglinton Avenue East? Okay, speakers? Staff recommendation has been moved by Councillor Burnside. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Cole, item 21.
Yes, Madam Chair. I will move the staff recommendations with one addition that I think.
I just have to call out the item.
Sure. It is reopening the amendment of item NY 23.40, change of parking regulations on Hillmount Avenue between Marley and Danesbury.
Okay, Hillmount. Go ahead.
So moving the 6 staff recommendations with one additional one that deals with the north side of the street. And there it is. So north stays the same, changes to the south side.
Any questions? Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 26. Is there anyone here for item 26? I understand Ron Saporta, Baycrest Health Sciences. Is there anyone else? If there is, please register with the clerk. Item 26 is a residential demolition application for 38, 40, 42, and 64 Baycrest Avenue. Go ahead, please. You have 5 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Ron Support. I'm here representing Baycrest Health Sciences, and we wanted to speak specifically about 4 houses that are on Baycrest Avenue that are owned by the hospital. Put it up here on the campus map. It's a bit difficult to see, but they're just directly south, on the south end of our campus. These houses were acquired by Baycrest over 30 years ago and have been rented out as single-dwelling homes ever since. About a year ago, we did a housing inspection on them and discovered quite a lot of work that's required to bring them up to acceptable standards, in excess of around $300,000. As a publicly funded hospital, we've got very limited capital budgets, and prefer to really focus and prioritize those on our healthcare needs and our priorities related to our patients and patient care. So as a result, we weren't able to come up with the capital funds needed to bring these homes up to a standard that's acceptable to us. We've been working with our residents and the tenants in those homes since. Those homes, we've helped them find new accommodations, so these houses are now sitting vacant. And what we're looking to do is to demolish them and create a new space within there. We are about to launch our master plan, which is a long process in partnership with the Ministry of Health. And the exact timing in relation to that is very difficult to say given the ministry and the provincial approvals that are required. So what we're hoping to achieve today is to be able to demolish them, to create a safe space, both for our residents and for the community. And actually working closely with our foundation, I'm pleased to report that we've started to secure some pieces of art. This is a photo of one of the donors and a piece of public art that the hospital will be receiving in the coming months. And our intention is to turn the spaces into a grass field, put some pieces of public art up, and partnering with our foundation, if we can raise funds, also put benches, things of that nature, so that both our residents can enjoy the area, and as well as the community in general. So thank you, and hopefully you could support us in this respect.
Any questions? Councillor Carroll.
So I'm not clear now, because you said there, you may have future plans to develop on the land?
So we are undertaking a master planning process that we do in partnership with the Ministry of Health. That's for the entire campus, including all of the owned lands. If I go back to the image, we own those 4 houses,
right,
but as well as everything else that's shown within that box, from Bathurst Street all the way back to, in essence, the TTC.
But the sort of public art use of the space would be temporary? Are you saying,
Correct,
as part of your master plan, it would eventually be used for structure?
There's potential of that. We haven't started the master planning process, and we're looking to do that right at the beginning of 2018, so in around January. And that'll help us determine what the vision is and what the needs are for the campus and for the community. So there is a potential to that. Of course, any changes we'd make from that perspective would go through the appropriate processes, site plan approvals and whatnot. But as a temporary measure, because we know that is the reality, those type of projects with the ministry is at minimum of 5 years, if not longer, and we'd rather not have something looking like this facing the community for that time frame.
Right, because normally we wait for the plan before we do that, but the residents are already out.
The houses are vacant, safety fences around them, and they're in a state of disrepair to a point where I don't think anybody would want tenants in them.
Okay.
Is someone prepared to make a motion?
Yes, I am, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
This is good news for the residents on Baycrest, and so I will, and obviously even though it's temporary, I think temporary will be 5+ years, to use it as kind of a sculpture garden or a place for both residents and Baycrest users is good news for the community, and so I will move recommendation number 2 on the recommendations, which is to approve the application to demolish the vacant single-family dwellings without conditions.
Councillor Pasternak.
I just want to support the local councillors, support Baycrest. The visioning for the site is remarkable. I think we owe it to this institution to help them along the way and not get in the way of the remarkable medical and support work that they're doing. And I thank you for coming in and sharing your vision with us.
I had a question
Councillor?
of the mover.
Question of the mover?
Councillor Cole, my understanding of the conditions were that they just sod it, grade it, and keep it in a clean area. So without conditions, what's the intention that you see with the site?
I'm not sure if you just heard the deputation, but that's exactly their plan. They're turning it into a park. So I think they just want why I'm moving number 2 without conditions is so they can get working on that to create the green space, benches, sculpture garden as soon as possible.
So wouldn't it be better in the approval simply to say, and to turn it into that with consultation with the local councillor?
Sure, I'll take that as a friendly amendment.
Just something so we're not
Yeah, so they approve the applications, demolish the vacant single-family dwellings without, and maybe strike without conditions, in consultation with the local council.
And it'd be landscaped.
And it'd be the landscape to the, in consultation with the local council.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay,
Otherwise,
Okay.
I'm fine, and I'm glad the houses are, you're gonna.
all in favor? Opposed?
Thank you.
Carried. Councillor Shiner, item 36. Willowdale Group of Artists qualify as a non-for-profit resident group. This is a new item that was added before us. Do you want to give us a once-over on it?
Sure, Madam Speaker. I think many of you have walked through the lobby here on occasion when the Willowdale Group of Artists has had their displays up here. They wanted to use, and I know they contacted Councillor Fillion's office as well, they wanted to use Edith Vale and a couple of other centers to display their art. As the artists get older and they're bringing in other artists from other areas, they have allowed some members that live outside of the Toronto area to join, so they don't meet the 90% number, they average 76%. That then affects the rate that they have for use of our facilities, and I thought it would be good to encourage them to continue with that, because it's the people that are in the facilities and the neighbors and those that are in City Hall that enjoy them the most. So I'm simply looking to have them qualify as a not-for-profit group, which would be the same as the 90%, so they can save themselves a few bucks on the fees.
It's my understanding that this must go to City Council.
That's fine.
Okay? Councillor Fillion.
Briefly in favor, it's a very long-standing group, and as with all arts groups, needs some encouragement, and so I support the motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Is there anyone here for item 27, the application to remove a private tree at 121 Allmore Avenue? Would you like to speak at this point? Go ahead. Anyone else? If you're here to speak, please register with the clerk. You have 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Nicholas Weinberg, and I'm here to speak about the removal of a tree at our home in the back at 121 Allmore Avenue. I put this forth because we actually have about 4 young boys ranging in age from 1 to about 10 years old. We're in the process of renovating our home, and throughout the years, we've been there about 7 years. Throughout the years, I guess some of the kids who are a little older now, we've had situations where they've sort of, either tripped on the roots of the tree or, banged into it, et cetera, and we obviously do not like removing trees at all. We have a replanting tree that I put forward to yesterday evening as well. My neighbor in the back of me also has a lot of concerns about the tree, as he is a young daughter, and I guess the owner is his mother or mother-in-law of the house, and they have a granddaughter who is right at the corner room. He's concerned that something might happen with the tree. We actually had one tree removed at the front of the house about 1.5 years ago by the city because of the ash bug, and we replaced it with 3 trees right on the property there. So I have some pictures of the tree and enclosed letter from my neighbor, and I just came here this morning to speak for a few minutes, but it's just because the tree is so massive, and what happens in the backyard is that we do have on a weekly basis, every Saturday, which is our Shabbat, we have a lot of people who come over to the house, and there's a lot of kids. There must be 30 to 40 kids there on a regular weekend, and I just want to make sure that it's safe for them and that we don't run into issues with any of our friends or any of the people in the area. So that's pretty simple. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I thank you for
Let's see
listening.
if there are any questions. Yes, Councillor Carroll.
So you're constructing on this site and haven't put up any construction hoarding around it?
No, we actually did. I have pictures where I had spoken to my contractor about it, and he ended up putting up one that was quite was a lot larger. So I have some pictures here that we put up right away, actually, afterwards. I guess in these situations, I try to leave it to the people who are the professionals, whether it's my architect or, you know, my contractor, and he didn't end up putting anything up, and I said to him, I'm like, you know, you better get it up because I don't want to get into any issues. And then we ended up putting some hoarding up for the trees. I have pictures here for you if you need to look at them.
There's an overhead projector right there.
Oh,
because we just
okay.
have the one, so I'd
Oh,
love to
sure.
see your pictures.
No problem, you got it.
Sure.
So this is the outside tree.
That's not the tree that you're asking.
No.
So we see a picture of that tree?
Oh, yeah, sure.
There it is. There's that big trunk. That's it with the hoarding around it?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So it was injured, but now the hoarding's around it, and staff say it's still a healthy and maintainable tree that should not be removed.
3 items left?
So the injury's been addressed since then?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Sure.
Councillor Pasternak?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand from your comments that you're concerned about the personal safety of your own children and children in the neighborhood who come to visit.
Correct, yes.
And it's also, from the staff report and from your comments, the tree is affecting the quality and enjoyment of your property.
Pretty much.
And have staff asked you to plant a replacement tree should we decide to approve?
I have a plan that I put forward where we would replace it with 5 trees if necessary. And we have a landscape architect who's going to be working with us to make sure that we do whatever's necessary to still add to the beauty of the area, because I realize that it's quite a tall tree.
Now, have you tried to work with staff to, I guess, accommodate, or, I mean, did they understand where you were coming from? I don't.
Well, when I first applied, basically it just got rejected. We reopened the case, and I guess I had reapplied right after. Like, we already started building, the structure's already up, we probably won't be replanting any trees until, or doing landscaping until next year in March or April or May. But I know that the tree currently, the roots are quite deep, and they're not touching the house yet. But I also have a letter here from the neighbor who wrote me the letter the other evening, who's very concerned, and I try to keep him happy as much as possible. But I can put that up on the screen if you need to see that as well. But that's pretty much.
Sure, certainly growing roots can severely damage the foundation and plumbing of a house. I share your concern. Did you want to put that on the screen?
Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead right
now. Is that? Oh, were you going to put a picture up, or?
No, this was a letter that the neighbor sent. They're extremely concerned about the tree because it hangs over onto their house. They have a much smaller house, and the tree's quite large, and their daughter lives in the corner bedroom. So he's been asking me for quite a long time, never mind even me applying for it.
So if I read this correctly, it's creeping in on a natural gas hookup and electric.
That was new. I just read that when he sent it to me yesterday. So.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Shiner, you have a question?
Sorry, yeah.
You can stay there to answer questions. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Can you help me? In the report we have, it says there was an application at the Committee of Adjustment for variances to add an addition to the home. That proposal, based on the minor variance approved at Committee of Adjustment, the tree could be protected with minor encroachment into the minimum tree protection zone, which is what Urban Forestry asked for. And the builder submitted a revised plan in February 2017 demonstrating that the Norway spruce tree would be protected in accordance with our tree protection. So you or your agents applied for the variances to construct the addition?
I believe my architect did, yes.
And you knew that the tree was in the corner and had to be protected?
The tree was there, correct, yeah. And being honest, it was probably just a minor oversight. I don't.
No, my question is,
Yes.
a condition of approval was that there be tree protection go in. You were aware of that?
I was not aware of that.
And the application for the building permit, and on the bottom of it, it says you have to abide and will put all your protective fencing in place before you get your permits? And that wasn't done. So who was, like, it's your house, your applications.
Yeah, sure, 100%.
And you signed the forms. You're telling me that you weren't aware of any of this?
I wasn't aware that it was actually incumbent upon us to do it before the actual permit was approved.
But you knew the tree was there, required
Sure.
tree protection.
Yeah.
And
It was actually quite far away. As I said, I'm not in this industry at all, so I
I know
don't.
that, but it doesn't matter. You're doing a renovation, and your agents would tell you that the tree was there, had to be protected, and couldn't come out. You weren't aware of that?
Oh, no, I knew the tree couldn't come out. That wasn't.
The tree had to stay.
Well,
So in all the applications.
we had applied for it far before, right? Even when I applied for it, I had an arborist do up a report on, like, even separate from my actual architect to
And
get
that
the tree
report said
removed.
the tree was in good condition, right?
Correct, but I'm coming from a different perspective where
Your
I have young
perspective is that
children.
You're gonna trip over the tree.
Point of order, Madam
No, I'm not gonna
It's-
trip over
it's
my tree,
not-
but I have a 3-year-old, I have a 2-year-old.
Counselor Shiner,
I
it's
have-
not a trial. It's, we're
I'm
not.
not trying, I'm trying
No,
to.
you're cross-examining him, and I think it's out of order.
Well, I'm not out of order.
We,
And I can ask
we
the
all
question.
know that when we do work around our house, we trust the contractors that we
Are
hire.
you on the floor now speaking?
Thank you.
You're not even on the floor.
Could you finish your questions, please, Counselor?
So, in due respect and on a point of privilege, I'm asking the deputy questions. I'm trying to understand what he knew.
Yes.
I'm trying to do it promptly, and I'm trying to get honest answers. And when I don't seem to have direct, but I'm having indirect answers, as you know me, as my personality, then I ask more questions because I'm trying to see if someone's being truthful with me or not.
Okay, but I do know your personality.
Thank you. So.
I have no problem you asking me the questions, and
You
I'm
wanted it out
answering you as honest as possible.
All right, and you were saying because people are going to trip on it.
Not people, we have a corner house, and we entertain a lot. We have a lot of young kids there, ranging in age from a year-old to 15, right? I'm a young father, and I don't have it documented, but there's been many instances when young kids have tripped, they've scraped their arms, and it's my responsibility, being the homeowner, when I have my friends over or their children, to be responsible for those children. So the only reason that I'm coming back to the city to ask to remove the tree is strictly because we have young children there. I have 4 young children myself. At any time, there could be 30 to 40 children there on a Saturday, and
It's a tree in the corner of your property.
it's actually not in the corner, it's right in the back, it's
All right.
right in the middle.
Thank you.
Could you not, when you're landscaping the property, put a border underneath it and put a small fence around it so kids don't run into it?
So, would you want to have that in your backyard? I wouldn't.
If I had kids that couldn't walk and kept tripping over it, yeah, I'd keep them away from it.
All right.
Well,
John Burnside, come in and save the day.
That's probably not going to happen, but I will be quick. I can guarantee you that, as I always am. So these roots, from the actual trunk of the tree, how far?
They're pretty close to the house. Like
No, I'm talking about
sorry.
these
How far?
exposed- are the exposed ones?
They're
From the
very.
base of the
They're
tree-
very exposed.
Well, not by up the picture I have, but how far from the base of the tree do the exposed roots extend?
Without knowing and measuring them, they come probably at least 4 feet, if not 5 feet out, or something like that. I don't know. They're pretty far. I didn't dig underground, right? We didn't dig anywhere in the backyards. I couldn't tell you how close they are to the house.
No, I'm not. Your contention, if I'm not mistaken, or your concern, is that people are tripping over these roots. So, to help this council, I would have thought you would have actually, because the picture I have shows a pretty clean tree with roots that aren't exposed. I would have thought you would be able to provide that distance but you can't, that's fine. But do you understand how problematic it is if we were to say, well, you should be able to cut down a tree because of exposed roots? That would.
Well, that was one concern of, and I have this letter here from my neighbor. They have a lot of concerns too, in terms of, you know, it overhanging on their gas line, which I wasn't aware of until yesterday. The letter's dated off.
But your application is all,
Yeah,
your
absolutely.
concern is strictly about these roots. You understand how problematic that is citywide if we were to say, yeah, you can cut down a tree because roots are exposed a foot from the base of the tree.
I'm strictly trying to create a safer environment for my children in my backyard. There is a replanting plan as well. It is in my private property. It's not like it's on city property. So I know that when a tree is on my private property, I have the right to ask. You know, hopefully it swings my way, but I'm not doing it to cut down a healthy tree. I'm not doing it to, you know, add less beauty to the area. I'm doing it strictly because I have young children and I want to make it safe for them. We will replant. We will make it look beautiful. You know, and that's.
Thank you very much. You may be seated now.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Pasternak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for coming to Depew today. I have a motion, if the clerk could put it on the screen, to approve the request to remove the privately owned tree at 121 Elmer Avenue. For those of us who have had young children, for those of us who've been homeowners, the quiet and safe enjoyment of our property is paramount. The safety of our children is paramount. When you have a neighbor who is growing increasingly concerned about the proximity of roots to a gas line and electrical line, we realize that the public safety is paramount. It's important to realize that roots can severely damage a property. I had the problem in my own home where roots created unspeakable damage to property, and it's our responsibility to make sure that people have the safe, quiet enjoyment of their home. The deputant, the owner of the property, has committed to a replanting program, and I trust that that will be done satisfactorily under the supervision of our forestry area. But that being said, I think I don't, you know, I think we're all committed to a tree canopy, but we're also committed to the safe enjoyment of private property, making sure that children are safe, and making sure that we don't have any tragedies from broken gas lines or electrical lines. And I think, as I said, I can speak from personal experience, the enormous cost and damage that a root can cause to an older home. So with that, I'm moving a motion to approve the removal of the privately owned tree, and I look forward to your support.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there someone from forestry here? Yes? Staff to the floor, please. Go ahead, David.
So is a tree in the corner of the back of the property or in the middle of the backyard?
It's more or less located in the southwest corner, so not directly in the middle of the yard, but not quite in the corner proper,
Okay.
according to the site plan.
And is it endangering any gas lines, water lines, sewer mains, or anything like that?
Not that's been brought to urban forestry's attention through the application process.
Is it a healthy tree?
Yes.
Did you have to go out to get tree protection around it during construction because it wasn't there?
Yes.
Are the roots exposed, causing a hazard of any type?
There is a root flare on the tree, which is common with the majority of trees, where the roots leave the ground and the trunk begins.
What's a root flare? Sorry, I'm not a forestry person.
So it's where the roots meet the trunk and then meet the ground. So it's where you sort of see the trunk flare out at the base.
For how far? Like 6 inches, a foot, 6 feet, 10 feet?
I'd say about a foot is where you see the most pronounced large roots that are leaving the actual trunk of the tree.
Otherwise, so that's normal for a tree.
It's actually a sign of a healthy tree to have a good root flare.
Can that be covered with wood chips and other stuff?
I would recommend, if you were to lay wood chips, that you wouldn't directly pile them on the root flare, but you could place them directly around.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Carroll.
Yes, just quickly, we've heard many times at Public Works Committee that the water staff maintain that roots don't actually eat through water pipes. They grow around them. It's when, if the water pipe corrodes on its own, roots will then, of course, invade it. What's the rule of thumb on gas lines? Do they invade gas pipes?
I haven't had any experience with roots invading gas lines. Typically, there would be no rationale for a root to penetrate a pipe. That would take a lot of actual force from a tree root.
Yeah.
I know that Enbridge doesn't prevent urban forestry from planting above their infrastructure. Typically, when there's work required to replace a damaged gas line or do emergency work, obviously the city would allow the removal to accommodate that work.
Okay, thank you.
I've been asked to take a recorded vote on this issue. So, in favor of Councillor Pasternak's motion, Councillor Pasternak, Councillor Carmichael Greb. Opposed, Councillors Burnside, Shiner, Carroll, Fillion, Ajamari, Cole, Peruzza. Thank you. It does not carry. Motion to adopt staff recommendation. Councillor Carroll, all in favor, opposed, carried. Please note Councillor Pasternak is opposed. Do you want a recorded photo? Okay, it's fine. Thank you. Councillor Carmichael Greb. Impose a condition to Boulevard Cafe permit located at 2592 Yonge Street. This is item 28. I understand there are no speakers to this item. Go ahead.
I just have some questions for staff.
Staff to the floor, please.
In the recommendations, there's a recommendation that the Boulevard Cafe railings be removed in winter months for surface maintenance as requested by Transportation Services. I've never seen this before. Is this something that we normally do?
Yes, that's is our standard requirement for cafe installation for fence to be removed during the winter time, so it doesn't impede with snow removal on the sidewalk.
And do most Boulevard cafes, is this a requirement that is on all Boulevard cafes currently in the city?
That's the practice we're trying to apply.
But not every cafe has this requirement.
I cannot speak to all the cafe applications, but that is the conditions that North York have been applying.
Okay. That is all. I'm going to be moving staff recommendations.
Item 28, Councillor Carmichael Greb is moving the staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 29, Councillor Peruzza, this is in your ward. Application for fence exemption, 79 Martin Ross Avenue. Is there anyone here to deal with this item? No one is registered. Do you have a motion?
Yeah, I just simply would like to defer it for a meeting, just to figure out what's up with this fence.
Defer it to the next cycle?
Yeah, sure.
All right. All in favor of that? Opposed? Carried. Final item, item 31. Councillor Burnside, you still have deputants on this item? Who would like to go first? Go ahead, sir. I believe this is our last item.
Parking restrictions placed on Tanager Avenue. Okay, I'll try to keep things short. Thanks for the community council. What we would like to do was authorize two types of parking restrictions: signs that indicate no parking from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. and 1 hour parking restrictions from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Friday. This is similar to parking restrictions on all of the streets in the surrounding area where we are located. A survey done by Councillor indicated a clear majority of the people that answered the survey supported the parking restrictions. Basically 77% of the residents on the street, there's 30 residents on the streets, responded, and 75% of those people who responded were in favor of the parking restrictions. So currently Taninger Avenue is being used as an all-day parking lot by staff and visitors to nearby institutions, notably Holland, Bloorview, CNIB, and some from the Sunnybrook Health Sciences Center. We are the only street in the area that does not have parking restrictions. Streets to the west of us, streets to the north of us, and 2 streets to the east of us all have parking restrictions similar to what I had mentioned. One of the reasons, or some of the reasons why Taninger Avenue residents are asking for these restrictions is that they have problems getting in and out of their driveways, problems receiving deliveries, problems doing work on their properties close to the street, and problems hosting visitors. Probably the biggest problem, though, is related to garbage pickup. There have been many occasions, particularly in the winter, where garbage trucks are not able to go up the street because the parked traffic, the parked cars there mean the street is too narrow for the garbage trucks to go up the street. At other times, garbage has not been picked up because parked cars are in the way of the trash, such as when we're putting out the leaves and other trash like that. It doesn't get picked up because the parked cars are in the way. And that's basically all I wanted to mention about this.
Okay, we usually don't do this with an additional item. This has been added to the agenda at the last moment, so we're not prepared to have all of these speakers. Councillor Carroll?
Oh, are there more speakers?
There are 5 more.
I don't know if you want, if there's a thorough motion coming, I'll save my questions.
Is there? Councillor Shiner?
So my question, possibly to you, Madam Chair, of the other deputants, are they all in support of what the deputy?
Are all the other
here
deputants
said?
in support of what this gentleman has said?
No.
Okay.
Ooh.
Okay, so a quick question to this deputant. It says that the pole, the street has already been poled. And I'm going to assume that the reason people are parking on your street is Rumsey and Hannah are already largely no parking.
That's correct.
Right. So they're finding the street that does look like they can park on it. One of the concerns we usually have, why we usually wait for a staff report on this, is what we would hate to see is a parking prohibition this stringent, then being followed by a slew of front yard parking pad applications. But I don't know the street well enough, and on Google Maps there's so much tree cover, it's hard for me to tell. Do we have to be concerned about that?
Well, no, all of the driveways on our street are capable. They're at least 10 meters or longer. So therefore, they're capable of holding 2 fairly large vehicles.
Okay.
Parking, that's not going to happen.
Okay, thank you.
But also, I know that some of the people who are opposed, they have a fairly steep slope on their driveway. So they depend on parking on the street because of the steep slope in their driveway.
I'm sure they'll tell me about it in their deputy.
No, they will, but...
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Okay, I thank you, Council, for letting us speak, and I'm sorry that we're standing between you and lunch. This is a very important issue to us, which is why I have personally taken a vacation day to come here. So thank you very much. So a few of us disagree with this motion being brought forward to you today, and I hope that you will consider rejecting this proposal, and I'm here to provide you with 2 of my personal reasons why. First, I believe that the process by which the vote has taken place may not have been a fair and an objective one. There was no discussion whatsoever about the proposed restrictions, and no other options was actually presented when we actually got the voting letter. There was definitely a high response rate reported, but I believe it may have been due to the fact that one of our neighbors supporting this went around collecting votes in person. This action could potentially create a bias and influence one's vote, in my opinion, and rendering that these votes no longer are anonymous, which potentially influence the outcome. I would support a democratic vote and outcome, but I do question as to whether the process that took place was a fair and an unbiased one. Secondly, and more importantly, I believe the spirit and intent of this request is actually a selfish one that promotes exclusion. The letter that was circulated, including the following direct quotes, and I'm quoting what was written: "I urge you to support this effort and return the street to the residents, and to banish those who use the street as a parking lot." Their concern is that there are so many parked cars that is not pleasing to the eye and that they need to be banished. Our community includes facilities, neighboring facilities including CNIB, Holland, Bloorview, Toronto Rehab, as well as staff, volunteers, patients, and families who visit. Some of these folks parks in the neighboring streets because the city mandated parking for the facilities may not work out for them because they're only visiting occasionally. We want to welcome these people who work there, who volunteer their time, especially for patients and families who are actually going through tough times. To me, they are just as much a part of our community, and I want to welcome them. We do not own the streets. The community does, and the city does. The reason why some of my neighbors are proposing these restrictions are because they think it is unsightly, and so they want to banish them. I personally do not believe the intent of this request is a noble one. On one occasion, one of the neighbors was yelling at someone who pulled in front of their house, but stopped when she realized that the person was her gardener. On another occasion, a neighbor put an orange pylon right in front of the house to prevent someone from parking there. The purpose of preventing others from parking on the street is selfishly motivated, in my opinion, and it is demonstrated through the letter that was generated when the votes were being asked. This, I believe, is a form of NIMBYism. Furthermore, I believe that this selfish intent that promotes exclusion rather than one of inclusion. In my opinion, if you pass this motion, it is to encourage such attitude and behavior. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Could I just ask a question of the...
Okay, would you come back, please, for a question? Go ahead.
Sorry, and you share equal levels of concern with both recommendations, the one and two?
Well, we share the concern that we actually didn't have any option to consider. The motion put forward was to implement these things. And, we on the opposing side would have been very much open to a discussion, but there was no such offer.
But are you opposed to the parking prohibition between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. and then also the one of the 1 hour from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.?
Yes, we are.
Both. Okay, thank you.
I had a question as well.
There's another question for you. Councillor Shiner?
So you live on the street,
I do.
and you're opposed to the regulations, changing them because you want to be able to park on the street,
I do.
and you currently park on the street?
Sometimes.
Do you, and I don't know your home, do you have sufficient room on your property to park, or?
I could. I actually am one of the houses that live on a hill, so I could pull 2 cars on the driveway. In the wintertime, we've had cases where our cars actually slid down because we couldn't stop in the weather. So it's actually safer for us to park on the street. And now the city has a 3-hour bylaw, so we do get ticketed sometimes. And really, if there's a concern about too many parking, if the bylaw of the 3-hour parking is actually enforced, then the cars may not be there. So I personally, the current 3-hour bylaw that's a default is, to me, sufficient. And just to counter another point about the other streets, actually there are other small streets in the neighborhood who doesn't have parking bylaws. It's the through streets that actually have the multiple bylaws, like Ramsey Hanna. Our street is very small with only 30 some odd houses. And there are other small streets that doesn't have such bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Shiner. Mary McDonald?
The strong sense of community is what we treasure on Tanager. helping others, lending things, street sales, where actually one resident surprised himself and sold his own parked car. Parking is a small issue, but the process is concerning because it has had a negative effect on our relationships. Last spring, there was an increase of parked cars, not surprisingly closer to the healthcare centers. However, during the past 3.5 months, the number of parked cars has significantly decreased. There are parking spots for just over 35 vehicles, and the maximum during this past 3 months seems to be approximately 16. That leaves about 20 available parking spots on our short one block. It appeared that only the few petitioners were the decision makers of the parking restrictions on which we would all vote. This does not seem democratic, and the optics can create unnecessary tension. It would have helped with community building if the residents had received a request before, asking for their input. One could say we were given an option. We were given an option to vote yes or no. There were voters who were thinking, are these my only options? It was presented and assumed by the voters that it was take this or leave it, creating a case of false dilemma or an illusion of choice. It would have provided some clarification if the voters had been informed about what the process would be if they were to vote no. Many people wanted change. Maybe they wanted change, but maybe not the changes that were selected. For example, some petitioners said they have difficulty backing out of their driveways. What about parking on one side of the street then? What about no change at the moment? I have concerns that this voting process was flawed, with possible cases of confidentiality and perceived pressure to vote yes. The petitioners talked to some residents at doors, offered to collect votes. This could have presented a very awkward situation for some residents and could have been perceived as pressure. As I was walking our dogs, I was approached by a resident stating that it was important that the parking restrictions be implemented, and I was asked if I had voted yet, and I hadn't. They said they could come and pick up my vote right then if I would just go into my house, complete it, and give it to them. I perceive this as pressure. If this approach was taken with me, was it taken with other residents? So I have some questions. Did the voters feel they were being pressured? Did this influence the voting? Should votes be collected by any residents at all? Of utmost concern is safety issues. Some of our driveways are on an incline, steep enough that our cars have rolled out onto the street. It is common sense and only safe to park on the street in bad weather, when it is dangerous to do otherwise. So far, we've been very fortunate there have been no injuries, or worse. Several years ago, I was in a head-on crash with an out-of-control driver on Highway 400, and I've worked hard to rehabilitate. I have gripped carpets on steps and around the car, and I wear special boots recommended by the Toronto lab, the winter lab at the Toronto Rehab Center. On icy days, though, simply parking on the driveway is not safe, and it puts me at high risk of falling when I get in and out of my car. To conclude, a petitioner wrote to the residents, and I quote, "Our neighbors on streets adjacent to Tanager long ago took measures to protect their interests. Our so-called interests have benefited tremendously from rapid urban development. We now sit on very expensive properties. Accepting a maximum of 16 parked cars on Tanager seems a small price to pay for our good fortune. My interests include all of the neighbors on Tanager and the greater community, the generous volunteers, the distraught parents with medically fragile children. The list continues." Jean Vanier writes, "Community is established by the simple, gentle concern that people show each other." Thank you for your consideration and care of our community.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the deputant? I have a couple. On on the survey form, was there any white space or a comment section for alternative recommendations?
Not that I recall. No.
There was no white space. The entire page was taken up by print.
No.
There was no spot
No,
to
but
the right.
it looked like that was done.
From your comments, it seems to me that parking on the street is actually not a problem as long as the residents have first right of refusal. Is that a fair
I don't know what
assumption?
you mean, the first right of refusal.
Well, parking restrictions are not really the issue here. It's who gets to park on the street first. And in your comments, residents should get first right of refusal
Oh,
to
I'm
park on
sorry.
the street.
I didn't mean that. I meant the greater community, all of us. It's all a public street. It doesn't belong to us. Maybe the quote that I read, that quote was from a letter. No, I strongly do not believe that.
Okay, thank you.
I strongly believe it's a public street. And we have 20 usually extra parking spots on a very short street that only can accommodate 36 spots.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? No? Jennifer Kinreys.
I have a 3-year-old daughter, and her name's Macy. This was a big year for her. She started preschool at the local public school. For those of you that have children, you will know this is a big step and quite the transition for a little child. It's important to make it positive. To help, the school requires that mom or dad, join the class for the morning for 1 week to ease the transition for the little ones. So my father, or as Macy calls him, hers 80, came to my house every morning that week at 8 a.m. to watch my 9-month-old son, Alistair, while he napped and played. He made it possible for me to be with my daughter when she needed me most. And since we only have 1-car parking, he of course parked on the road for those 3 hours. What would my family have done if my street did not allow parking from 8 until 10 a.m.? Now that Macy is all settled in preschool, I regularly host mommy and baby playgroups at my house. All moms take turns. It's important for babies to socialize and learn to play with one another. And really important for moms to interact with adults. It keeps us sane when feeling isolated and lonely. How could I do this if my guests could only park on my street for 1 hour at a time? No one would come and we'd be alone. As they say, it takes a village to raise a family, and I thought my family lived in that village. I thought Leaside valued community. However, this proposal is proving the opposite to me. The entire process has not been inclusive and not good for building community. For example, we were not involved and only given a binary option to vote on. Yes or no for the most extreme restriction. There can be a middle ground. The petitioner stated that the precedent had already been set by neighboring streets. However, Rumsey Road is a busy school street that runs for many blocks with a variety of parking restrictions. Hannah is also a long street with a variety of parking restrictions. It's not comparable to Tanager Avenue, a 1-block-in-length street that doesn't even stretch to Eglinton Avenue. Comparable streets are Glenbrae Road and Beaufield Road. They are just a few blocks east and run between Broadway and Glenville, just like our street. Neither of these streets have parking restrictions. Roxville Avenue, a small 1-block street a couple blocks west, does have a restriction. However, it's completely different to the ones proposed for Tanager Avenue. If you look at all the streets, there is no precedent. If you look specifically at the comparable streets, there definitely is no precedent. Besides the tradespeople, the construction workers, and the residents of Tanager Avenue, the other cars on the street belong to volunteers and families that visit patients at the hospitals on Glenville Avenue. Hospitals like Bloorville Kids Rehabilitation Hospital. It's worth stating that there really aren't that many cars parked on the street. We have about 35 available spots, and typically you only see about 16 cars. I live in the corner house, which is nearest these hospitals, and my guests have never had a problem finding a spot on the street. I really question what kind of community would work to prohibit these people from parking here. For those families with patients at the hospitals, I'm happy to alleviate the burden, even if all I'm doing is offering free parking. For those volunteers, I applaud their work, and actually I'm benefiting from their service as well. I feel safer in my house knowing my street is not secluded and that kind people are around if I ever need help. I also feel safer knowing that drivers cannot speed on my street due to the parked cars. John Burzon, you can attest to this. This is a major issue in Leaside, and to the fact that some Leasiders are even urging neighbors to park their cars on both sides of the roads to minimize speeding throughout the neighborhood. If this proposal moves forward, we'll be trading this issue for a far more dangerous one. So I ask you, the members of this community, please vote against these harsh restrictions that will greatly impact our community. If you don't want to take sides, please vote for the community. Vote for my daughter who needed me at preschool. Vote for my son who loves playing with his friends. But most importantly, vote for the children, parents, and volunteers at the hospitals. These hospitals are a part of our community. Neighborhood families take their children swimming at the Bloorview Pool. Many use the Toronto Rehabilitation Hospital entrance to walk their dogs in Sunnybrook Park. The daycare at Bloorview caters to staff and children in the neighborhood. They see us as a part of their community. Why can't we see these people as a part of our community? Thank you for your time.
Okay, is there any new information that that speakers who haven't spoken yet would like to give? We're just running out of time. Yes, sir? You've spoken already. No, I'm sorry. We don't have time. Anyone else that must speak? Thank you. Thank you. Please, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm last, I'll keep this very short. I moved to Tanager Avenue 20 years ago, partly because it's an incredibly safe neighborhood. And one of the reasons it is so safe is it's not a through street. There are cars parked on the street which actually slow down traffic, and I believe that's the case. The other reason I believe this can be an issue, I'm probably one of the last people on the street that's planning on doing a renovation. And this is where I'd look for request other options, because having contractors there is the same. I mean, there are going to be other cars on the street. They're going to be there between 8 and 10 o'clock, probably just about every day over a year. So any other options we could look at, rather than absolutely no parking, I would want to consider. Thank you.
Can I just ask
Is there a question? Yes, question of you, sir?
Yeah.
Stay, please. Sir, please stay. Go ahead.
I just have a question through you, Madam Chair, to the speaker, and the same one I asked earlier. There are two recommendations here. One is about the 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. prohibition. The other one's the 1 hour parking from basically the whole day. Are you opposed to both?
I mean, I am opposed to both. I mean, for both of those reasons, again, because of safety, but also because the no parking will be an issue, certainly while I'm having contractors there, but even the 3 hour, or pardon me, the 1 hour throughout the day will be an issue as well. So status quo is what I'm looking for.
Equally distasteful, these two. Not one is.
Well, if there's an option, the no parking in the morning would be the biggest for me.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you. Can we vote now? Is that it? Okay. So, Councillor Burnside.
So thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm reminded of my days as a police officer when my unit commander said to me that there's no more contentious issue in a neighborhood than parking. And not to be flippant or trite, he did say there could be a murder not too far away and people want or get more upset about parking, and I think we've all experienced that. Just the genesis of this is that a resident did reach out to me, had concerns about parking and the difference in parking regulations. I then, as I do with anyone that reaches out to me, I ask that they get some sort of petition showing some sort of interest, and then my staff, we do a vote. In this case, the participation rate was 77%, 75% voted in favor. I did have numerous conversations with both sides and agreed to meet with both sides to see if some resolution could be arrived at. Unfortunately, one that did not pan out. I believe that one of the most important things for me is to live up to not only my word, but the process that I've initiated. That being the case, I am moving the motion. The recommendation is for the recommendation 1 and 2. Recommendation 1 is to prohibit parking 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Monday to Friday on both sides of Tanager, and the other is the 1 hour parking prohibition from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
So we're going to take those separately.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Councillor Shiner.
So, Madam Speaker, I heard both sides here, and as a local councillor, we all know that there's no way to satisfy everybody, and there's no way to get a perfect view on the community, so we all try our best, which is what I believe my colleague had tried to do with the survey. I'm going to move an amendment, you can support it or not, but to change his 1 hour limit to a 2 hour limit. I'm sorry I didn't give it to the staff earlier, and I will tell you why. my understanding is that the problem very much is the employees parking on the street instead of paying for parking on site. And they spend all day there, and those of us that have any institution near us, whether it's an educational institution or sometimes doctor's offices or others that have lots of parking, have the same problem, where the streets are inundated with people that should be parking in the spots that are located for them. But I have some consideration for both the residents and people that might visit the facility that might not be able to get a spot. And the reason I'm saying 2 hours is, there is nobody standing there to time your vehicle when you park or when you leave. Parking enforcement comes and may circulate by sometimes to look or may come for a call. That means most people would have 2, maybe even 3 hours, which should be sufficient time either to have visitors at their home or to be able to go first, if they're going over to the Bloorview Center, to be able to do what they have to do, whether it's the pool or facility or whatever else, and have that parking. Because there's no, as I said, no one's standing there to say, you got there at 9:52, so at 11:52 I'm going to put a summons on your window. It doesn't happen that way. And it's kind of an accommodation, but I understand the issue about having employees parking on the street when they should be parking next door. It's completely your choice as members of council whether you'd like to support that or not, but I think it's between the 1 and the 3, it's the 2, because there is a 3-hour limit.
So, Councillor, you're changing number 2
To be
to 2 hours? Okay.
But I'm supporting the first one because I don't believe that the employees should be parking there in the morning. I think that they should be parking on the premises themselves.
Okay, thank you. To speak, Councillor Carroll.
Madam Speaker, I sound like a broken record, and I know I do, but for people outside of the area of crosstown construction, which is generally our colleagues in the other community councils, I think we cannot underestimate the impact that Eglinton crosstown construction has on everything along it. I would not be, yes. And when we talk about this, you can see the people in downtown community council and Scarborough and Etobicoke glazing over. But I suspect that in the last few years, and probably for the next couple of years, part of the problem here is that by the time you arrive at Bloorview McMillan for your child's appointment, or even your child's special needs swimming lesson, or the rehab center, the cardiac rehab center, or the rest, staff are taking up, by and large, the parking lot is completely taken up by the staff inside those institutions, because I suspect that during crosstown construction, a lot more of them are taking cars than would normally if they had a great transit option and if Eglinton was running smoothly. They might even be getting dropped off by their members of family if it wasn't a frustrating drive, and will be until we complete that project. But I think that because that is the case, I'm going to support Councillor Scheiner's amendment, because I don't think you want to get to the point where there is no way to get there for a specialist appointment. And a specialist appointment, you can't get up the street, in the door, to your appointment, and back to your car again with that child in the space of 1 hour. You could in the space of 2. It will discourage staff from parking there all day, but there are going to have to be some valves, and occasionally when we live close to an institution, our street is the valve. I suspect that transit will alleviate this. That crosstown is going to make it amazing for hospital workers all along the Eglinton corridor, going to all sorts of institutions once it's there, and that will alleviate some of the problem here. But I also caution folks, be careful what you wish for, because you put in the 1 hour and it seems like a great idea until you yourself are having a party, and then your guests are not happy. And so I think that the 2 hour is really a much better compromise.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we're ready to vote.
No, Madam
Oh, I'm sorry.
Chair.
Go ahead.
For the very same reasons just stated by both my colleagues, I may take this just a step further, and maybe I don't have to do this, I can just vote against it, but I'm actually going to move that we just delete number 2 for those same reasons stated. And so I'll move that motion.
So if that carries, let me understand. we are left with prohibition of parking from 8 to 10 in the mornings. Oh, okay. All right. So, Councillor Shiner's motion
Is to amend number 2.
is
I'm
to
moving
amend number
delete it.
2. So Councillor Cole's amendment first. Okay? We're voting on Councillor Cole's amendment to delete number 2. All in favor? 1, 2, 3. Okay. And opposed? It does not carry. Councillor Shiner's amendment on number 2 to authorize parking for a maximum period of 2 hours from 10 to 6 p.m. weekdays. No, to the 1. To the 1. Yours is 1. Yes. Okay, so on Councillor Shiner's amendment, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It carries. And opposed? Okay, so that carries. And now we're voting on item 1, prohibition of parking. All
Sorry,
in favor?
Madam, just as a point of order, do we vote on number 2 as amended?
Okay, number 2 is amended. 1, 2, 3, 4, it carries, and opposed, it carries. And number 1, as is. All right, all in favor? Opposed, carries. So that's it. All right? Councillor Cole, you have a motion to introduce and enact certain bills.
I do, Madam Chair. That the North York Community Council pass and declare as bylaws bills 1136 to 1145 and bills 1147 to 1149, prepared for the October 17th, 2017 meeting 25 of the Community Council.
Have you removed the Hillmount bill?
Was the Hillmount bill removed? In this? Okay.
You have that?
I'm told yes.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Carroll, you have a motion to introduce and enact the confirming bill.
Yes, that the North York Community Council pass and declare as a bylaw a confirmatory bill to confirm the legislative proceedings of the North York Community Council acting under delegated authority at meeting 25 on October 17, 2017.
Okay. And shall this bill be, I threw it away. Passed and declared, what? As a bylaw? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.